Welcome everybody. My name is Hakon Heimer. I'm the co-founders of Pure Lines for Mental Illness, and welcome to the first ever mental Tapas. We've had a few changes in the schedule, so we'll be sort of making a few things up as we go along, which you won't even notice. I shouldn't even said it, because what we're doing here is we're melding the science and the arts, and we do things in different ways. Scientists have PowerPoint slides, and they march up slowly with their memory sticks, and then nobody can figure out how to make the slides work. And then we do long introductions of all your honors and that sort of thing. Whereas in performance, you just flow through things. So we're going to try to meld the two. And I actually, one of our headliners, my co-founder Hakon Heimer, is sick, and he won't be able to come. So he was going to start things. So I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation talking a little bit about what Robin would say, and a few other things about Pure Alliance. And then we'll just flow from there through the various talks. But it's not going to be as boring as you think. I'm actually going to show family pictures, and so it'll be interesting and fun, I think. But it illustrates something really important about mental illness and where we are in our understanding of mental illness. I'm going to talk about Robin, and I'm going to talk about my younger brother Gösta. He's 5 years younger than me. And Robin Cunningham, this is him, just shy of his 14th birthday. Right around this time, he was driving with his parents on a road trip, and he began to hear voices in his head. Decided it was actually the voice of Satan. He'd grown up in a fundamentalist family. And he began, over the course of a very short time, 3 or 4 days, began to hear actually several voices that were demons, that he ascribed them to demons, and they began to have conversations with him about his faith. And then he also believed that he had a special mission to protect the world. And this was in 1954. And but in his family, even though they were fundamentalists, this wasn't totally an unknown thing, because his father, who's actually one of the babies in this baby carriage here, was the son of that man there, Walter. Walter had died in the state mental hospital. He hanged himself, and the assumption is that his diagnosis was schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And Robin's father had 3 other siblings, and 3 of them had mental illness. 2 of them spent the rest of their lives in a psychiatric hospital and had prefrontal lobotomies. Their lives were completely ruined. And Robin's father, was the only one in his generation who escaped. And because they knew this, and they didn't think it was the devil, they decided to get treatment, and they got very lucky. Robin really wanted me to show this picture, because he would have shown it if he was here. This was Dr. Levy, his psychiatrist. And so it's a psychiatrist who'd been trained in Germany, where they believed in the medical model, where at a time in the United States when psychoanalysts believed that it was your mother's fault if you had mental illness. And so Dr. Levy didn't believe that, because the Europeans abandoned Freud very quickly after Freud came along. And what Dr. Levy did was he said, we're not going to put this kid in the attic or in the psychiatric hospital, because that's the end of his life. So they mainstreamed him at a time when he was still hearing voices. And he said, Robin says, I multitasked. I would have conversations with demons in my head while I was in school. And he said I was the weirdest kid in school. But little by little, over the course of 10 years or so, Dr. Levy tried out all these medications. And Thorazine had just come on the market, the first antipsychotic, the year before. So he tried that, low doses, tried other ones, they worked better and better, the voices got more muted, the anxiety got less great. And then he tried all kinds of other things, like animal therapy, things that nowadays we would think are actually quite useful, but didn't, he just did this by the seat of his pants. He did cognitive behavioral therapy that he sort of made up as he went along. And Robin actually went on to be a pretty funny-looking guy. No, I mean a really successful guy. So Robin graduated high school at the top of his class. He went to the University of Washington. He graduated with honors. He went to the University of North Carolina on a scholarship to do graduate work in psychology. Unfortunately, he says he decided that he didn't want to take medications anymore. He was tired of that, so he stopped taking them, and he crashed in a big way and ended up really sick for a year and a half or so. But then he found a new medication that worked quite well. He said it was like flipping a light switch. You could feel it working on the way home. And he was working some lab jobs, and then he met a girl, Valerie, and he decided he needed a real job. So he said he did things he never thought he would do. He got an MBA. After he graduated with his MBA, within 2 years he became vice president of a investment bank in San Francisco. He went to Dean Witter, where he was vice president. He worked in corporations, major corporations, with major executive jobs for a long time. Then started his own companies and started buying and selling companies and made lots of money and retired at the age of, he changes it, depending on what his wife says and what he says. But around the age of 50, he retired, so he'd made a lot of money. His wife went back to work, and he raised his daughter. So he had a life that was really, you could say, despite the fact that he occasionally, when medications changed or went off the market and he had to change them, became actively psychotic, which he knew how to deal with. This is Robin today in Berkeley, and I hope he comes up next year. But so that's one way that schizophrenia can go, and it doesn't go that way very often. What is more common, or is it maybe the other end of the spectrum anyway, is my brother Gösta. He's 5 years younger than I am. Here he is. This is he's about 4 years old. I don't know if you immigrated from Sweden yet, but this sort of classic Swedish Dutch boy haircut. Classic skinny Swedish American boy. That's not him in the background. I don't know who that kid is. At least I don't know him in the droopy white drawers. No, I do know he is. Childhood friends. We moved first to Boston for 6 years, and then we moved to Virginia and we bought a farm. Who knows why? My parents decided we should grow up on a farm, a 200-acre cattle farm. And my father was actually a neuroscientist, but my mother had come from farm stock, and she thought it was a good thing for her boys. So we grew up sort of like your average, normal Swedish, Norwegian, American immigrant boys, on a farm in Virginia, playing football. And Gösta is, I think he's the guy hiking the wall there. That's me on the right. And we had, in some ways you say we had an idyllic childhood. And Gösta's on the left here, my left, that side. And he was a great horseman. That's one of the sort of things that he loved all through his life. And in general, you might say he was sort of like the most wonderful of all of us. He was really athletic, he was popular, he was outgoing. He was one of those kids who aced his SATs. But around the age of 16, he began to hear voices and developed schizophrenia. And for the next 10 years or so, he was in and out of psychiatric hospitals trying different drugs that worked somewhat. And one of the things to say about the experience of having schizophrenia is that your social circles constrict, especially in those days. Friends disappear, and you're left with a very small group of people, your family. Our grandmother came over from Norway for months at a time to stay. But it was a difficult time for Gösta. This is when my youngest brother, Knut, graduated from high school, and Gösta should have graduated the year before, but he never finished high school. So, this must have been a very difficult moment for him. And for my mother, who had actually just started working on a master's degree in public policy and had to stop, and so she never finished that degree. Family friends, there are a few family friends that you can spend time with, but it makes it very hard. Your circle constricts. That's my father. Since Gösta during that period when he was in and out of hospitals. But one of the great things about Gösta was he always liked to be with family. So even when he seemed like he was not enjoying himself, he was actually enjoying himself. He always said that. He said, "No, I want to be here." If he was sitting in the kitchen and everybody moved someplace else, this is some days when you smoked, right? So Gösta, instead of my younger brother Knut smoking in the living room, Gösta would move with you. So he enjoyed family. My parents were very close to him. He tried all the medications that people asked him to try, and he generally did the things, for the most part, that were asked of him. There were some bumps along the way, arrests for silly little things. But for the most part, we were spared a lot of the horrible things that happen to people whose family members end up on, homeless. Gösta, he doesn't work. He's never finished school. He has never really had a relationship. He doesn't have a family of his own. But he has us, and we spend a lot of time together. He spends all his weekends on the farm with my other two brothers. So the question is, how can two people who have the same symptoms end up in such different places? And the truth is we don't know. We have no idea. Schizophrenia and most other autism, most other mental disorders now are a bit like fevers in the 1800s. You know, doctors would diagnose you with, you have this kind of fever or that kind of fever, and all they knew was that they were fevers, but when they didn't understand microbiology. They didn't understand all these, you know, little viruses and bacteria. And it was only over the course of the next 100 years that we figured out what a lot of these infectious diseases were. And that's what we need to do with mental illnesses. So Robin and I decided to start Cure Alliance for Mental Illness because there's a lot of advocacy for services in Washington, D.C., but there's no one who goes in and says, are we doing the research we need to find really good medications that don't have side effects and that actually treat all the symptoms, or doing research on behavioral therapies that could actually really work really well. And so one of the things that we first discovered when we looked at, so this is, I'm not going to show you a lot of data, don't worry. And if any of the scientists in this audience, don't look too closely, there's no error bars or anything like that. All, I arbitrarily, so what's here is those blue people is the percentage of the disease burden in the United States that are affected by these different disorders. So cancer, as you can see, is quite a bit higher. It's about 30% higher than the mental illnesses as a group. AIDS has diminished almost nothing in the United States, thanks to it's a chronic manageable disease now. But the green bars are the money, you know. And if you take cancer as the gold standard, you see mental illness funded well below that level, even below the level of AIDS. And there are many other disorders that are funded above the level of mental illness. And so we decided we wanted to change that, and we created Cure Alliance for Mental Illness. One of the things we wanted to do was think about the word cure. And the autism people in some ways led the way here. Using the word cure made people understand that if you're sitting at a table outside Walmart and you're advocating for research on autism and schizophrenia, it's just as valid as advocating for breast cancer research. So we decided that we should claim these words, this word cure, for these disorders, understanding that cure is a big thing to reach for, but it's at least an aspirational target. We think we can aspire to this, even if the treatments won't ever be perfect cures. So our mission is to unite patients, families, clinicians, scientists to advocate for federal funding. We've done some small pilot projects. I'll just tell you a few about those. So we started a petition. This is our erstwhile former governor and defender of the metric system. We try to get out and about, link the brain to mental illness, and we have these. We did a mystery letters campaign trying to create a little awareness. So these stickers you might have seen around in Providence and other places in Rhode Island. It's one of the places we've actually been getting them out and about. We started college chapters. We have our first 2 college chapters already. Hopefully we'll have more of those in the upcoming years. And eventually all this has to go into Washington, D.C. and join the other advocates at the table, because the NIH pie, which is where most of the National Institutes of Health, that's where most of the money comes from. It's a pie, and when they're dividing up the pie, if you're not there at the table fighting for your piece, you know, guess what? Somebody else takes your pie. And so that's what Cure Alliance for Mental Illness is.